I'm honored to be here. I know this lecture is last second organization, and my first aim is not to disappoint you. My second aim is not to let you sleep. This is a subject that many of you are not familiar with, but you probably heard two sexy terms, Kurdish and nationalism together, and you're hoping that I won't bore you, and please say something that we can learn from you and go home and tell friends that at least we didn't try to kill ourselves during the but to accomplish that aim, what I like to do today is to, one thing I will not be doing is I will not be your Google. I will not be giving you information that you can find in Google. I will, the first portion of the lecture, we will swim about, and then we will go a little deeper. And I'll look at your eyes. If you go sleepy, I'll probably try to crack a joke if it comes to my mind. Sometimes it does. Let me start with the subject matter. Kurdish, probably most of you have heard of Kurdish, forget about nationalism, but the term Kurd very recently in the 90s because of the Gulf War. And most people don't know that Kurds are the speaker of an Indo-European language. In fact, Kurdish is very similar to French. Very similar. So in that sense, when you think of Kurds, it is wrong to think Orientals, whatever that you might think Oriental is, it might be. Another important piece of information is that this, when we talk about Kurds, you might not have heard of them, but the population of which ranges depending on who defines it and how you define it, somewhere between 20 to 30 million people. A huge population. In fact, some people, when they apply for grant proposals, the first sentence they say, this is the largest ethnic group in the world that has no state, which has a truth to it. Other important piece of information is that at the present, Kurdish nationalism is quite vibrant. You probably have heard of them in Iraq, in the context of Iraq. But the largest Kurdish population reside in Turkey. And in fact, 15 million or so live in Turkey. Turkey is approximately 75 million. That's a sizable minority. In Iraq, we have somewhere around 5 million or so. Iran has actually a little more than Iraq. You have close to 6 million. Syria has 2 million or so, and it's scattered in different parts of the world. In Europe, you find approximately 750,000 of them in Germany, but in France has some too. So Kurdish intellectuals and immigrants are quite active politically in Europe. So this is the extent of information that you will get out of me as a Google person. Let me tell you this subject of this research. I published this very recently, actually. The title of the article is also, Does Nationalism Have a Name? But today's talk is based on my previous book, first book, and also this article. And the book is in the library, but if you want to read the article without the jokes and whatever else that I might say here, is you can I can email it to you after the lecture. We can see if you can email it to you. So you don't have to trouble yourself. Secondly, let me talk to you about why I'm interested in this subject. I grew up in Turkey, and as I said, approximately 10–15% of Turkish population are of Kurdish origin. But until very, I would say, my teenage years, I heard that there were different people living in Turkey as Kurds, and they're different. In fact, I thought that the Kurds is a curse word in Turkey in a very long time. But my first face-to-face experience experience came with when I was serving in Turkish military, when I was stationed in a close to border town to Iraq, when Saddam Hussein gassed Kurds, and they had to cross the border to Turkey. So I was stationed very close to these camps, and I had first-hand information about who they are and what they do, albeit they're Iraqi Kurds, but they still share some similarity with the Kurds and the ones those in Iraq and in Turkey too. So that sparked my interest. When I came to this country for graduate study, I thought this would be an excellent subject for a graduate level work, because there was nobody studying these things in the late 80s, early 90s. In Turkey, it was almost forbidden because the use of the word Kurd was punishable by jail, and Kurdistan would be, in fact, at least 10-year, would earn you 10 years in jail. In this country, no one would take you because no one studied Kurds, no one studied Kurdish nationalism, most academics didn't even heard of it. Although in Europe there were here and there some people. So it was a risk in my part to take and study these people. I wanted to do it in the historical context, and I wanted to do it as a scholarly work. And for that reason, I started studying who the Kurds are, and my dissertation, in fact, was Kurdish evolution of Kurdish identity. As I study and publish, I realized that more and more people were joining in. The problem I had with these people, and the problem that they had with me, is that I insisted on producing a scholarship for the sake of scholarship. So most of this so-called scholarship were journalistic in nature, and still is. In fact, that's one of the problems that we have at the present for Kurdish scholarship and Kurdish studies. In fact, this university is trying to establish a Kurdish studies chair in the political science department. That's a quite admirable endeavor in my understanding, and I hope they would accomplish that. So what I wanted to do is to rise above this political bickering that the Turks don't like Kurds, Arabs hate the Kurds, Kurds don't like this, and that just go beyond it and try to understand the dynamics of a group of people and their demands and their identity. By doing so, I was very much also interested in nationalism. And in fact, if I define myself as a scholar, I probably would first define myself as a student of nationalism. And secondly, I would say the subject that I study is Kurdish nationalism. While doing so, not to point out Kurdish nationalism, I also look into to make comparative cases, Arab nationalism, Turkish nationalism, see if there are similarities and differences. Kurdish nationalism is unique in a sense that if you think the ultimate goal of nationalists to create an independent state, this is one of those who fail to accomplish that at this point. And in fact, many Kurdish nationalists, even though they don't want to say it, the ultimate goal is to create a state, an independent state. What I like to do today is to take you deeper than this. I will be dealing with some theory, so that's the boring part, but I want this talk to be scholarly, and I want you to go home and not to talk about just, I want you to relate to it. And when I talk about theory, I hope you can relate to it in a way that whatever political identity you have would come into the picture. There are two main questions that I like to address today. One is, I will be questioning when Kurdish nationalism emerged as a political movement, the origin of Kurdish nationalism. The other question is, what is the relationship between nationalism and the past? So these are the two questions. And in fact, the second point the relationship between nationalism and the past give birth to the title, thus Kurdish nationalism and the Navel, and I will explain that. Just to lay the groundwork, let me tell you that if you study nationalism, you will soon discover that there are two main schools of thought about nationalism. One group are called essentialists or primordialists. The other groups are called constructionists or modernists. Now, the essentialist school believe that every nation, group of people, every ethnic group, has an essence. They were created as such. And this essence is hidden somewhere in distant history. And it's always there, and it evolves to the present time. Now, in their understanding, the ultimate goal of this essence in a teleological process, if I can say that word right, teleological process, the end point of it is the creation of a nation state. An Italian thinker of 19th century summarizes it very neatly, and this is, and I quote, he says, his name is Giuseppe Mazzini: "The nation is the God-appointed instrument for the welfare of the human race, and in this alone its moral essence lies. Fatherlands are but workshops of humanity, and nationalism is what God had prescribed to each people in the work of